Strap yourself in because your pool game is about to take off. If you feel stuck in pool, this one is for you. I'm gonna walk through 5 areas that actually matter for improving and where progress for most players stall. I get asked all the time about how my pool game improved so quickly as a beginner, especially since I only started seriously learning the game during the pandemic and I had 0 access to a table. Now this is gonna take a while, but I promise, stick around. These insights are not easy to find anywhere on YouTube, at least not all in one place. Maybe you'll learn something, and if not, tell me what I missed. Leave a comment, let's talk. I do respond to pretty much everything. Now, like a lot of you, this is where I learned the game, on YouTube. And that's where most people are learning these days. But as I've continued to improve, I've realized how much important information isn't actually on YouTube, at least not in a way that gives clear direction. So the things that actually jump-started my improvement came from learning how to learn this game without getting stuck or overwhelmed. And I know a lot of players feel stuck at their level. They play a lot, but nothing really changes. So in this video, I'm going to share some of the actionable steps you can take to finally start getting better at this game. Not quick fixes, not secret drills, what actually works. So here are the 5 areas that matter, and I'll break each one of them down in its own segment. And this is important. Each one builds on the last. So the first one is studying the game. More importantly, how to study the game without getting bored, overwhelmed, or stuck. We don't all see studying the game as necessary, but for me, especially early on, it was. And because of COVID, YouTube, books, articles, and conversations about pool became the driving force in my pool game. But studying is where a lot of players can also get stuck. There's so much information out there, it becomes paralyzing. Aiming systems, drills, mechanics, philosophies, it's easy to feel like you're learning when really you're just consuming. At a certain point, more information doesn't actually help. It starts to slow you down. What I see all the time is players trying to learn everything at once, every kicking system, every banking system, every aiming system. Actually, aiming systems are a perfect example. They're great systems. You can learn useful things from all of them. But if you can't see the forest through the trees, they don't help. Look, I used to struggle a lot with shot making, not because I didn't know the right aiming systems, but because other parts of my game were not allowing me to strike the ball well. Meanwhile, I was going down these rabbit holes about aiming systems that didn't actually make me a better player. So my advice, at least for aiming, is to keep it simple. And that ties into pretty much everything in this video. Pick what makes sense to you and stick with it. When it comes to studying this game, the real hack here is knowing what to study and dedicating yourself to that. This isn't about mastering everything. Even at higher levels, they don't know every system. What they do know is how it all works together. So here are some key areas most players should study to improve their game quickly. First of all, fundamentals. Fundamentals matter. Now, I got a lot of gripes about fundamentals, and maybe this is a video for another time to deep dive into that, but there's no such thing as perfect form in pool. Every pro has a different stance, stroke, grip, mechanics. I want you to remember this. This is important. Description over prescription. Instead of trying to copy a pro's stroke, pay attention to the qualities and the rhythm and the timing and find versions of that works with your body. We all move differently, and that matters. So that's all I'll say about fundamentals. The next bit of this is pattern play and cue ball control. Though for this purpose, I'm gonna call it cue ball knowledge because they're not separate. They're 2 sides of the same coin. The more cue ball knowledge you have, the easier pattern selection becomes. Now this is crucial. Everyone talks about them separately, but you really need to learn them together. On patterns specifically, you should probably study patterns for games that you're actually gonna play. If you're only playing bar box 8-ball in League, don't study big table 9-ball patterns. Patterns with minimal cue ball movement matters more for bar box 8-ball. So find content that aligns learning that game. Match what you are desiring to learn with the games you actually play. It sounds simple, I know, but it's important, and I think a lot of people skip that. Now, studying the table is important too, not just patterns, but how the balls move. reference lines, how rails behave, playing conditions. Now again, I'm not saying learn everything. Learn one reliable kicking system or banking system and stick with it. The speed of improvement comes from simplicity. Now also, I am a devourer of pool content, specifically watching matches, pro and amateur. Watching pros helps calibrate decision making. It's a really good feeling when you see a pattern on the table and then pros execute your pattern. And then watching amateurs helps you see yourself, challenge yourself to learn from other players' mistakes. Because when you study matches, they should either confirm what you believe or challenge it. And that feedback loop is powerful. Studying really comes down to knowing what to focus on and committing to it, even if you don't have ideal conditions. Like during COVID, I worked on what I could, just hitting balls into a pillow on my dining table. And yet, because of focusing on these elements outside of the actual table, by the time I got back to a real table, those things came to fruition in my game quickly. Now, look, studying matters, but compared to what comes next, studying is just the starting point. By the way, if this is already helping you, feel free to subscribe, and I'm gonna keep going deeper in on all this stuff in other videos. I made a choice to actively pursue making more content, and the support really helps me make more videos like this more often. Okay, let's talk about solo practice, and more importantly, how to practice well. Just like studying, knowing what to practice makes a massive difference. Now, hitting balls by yourself in a pool hall might feel productive, but honestly, it doesn't actually move the needle very much. Remember this, intention plus attention equals improvement. Regardless of what you're practicing, if you're not paying close attention to how you're striking the cue ball, the result you get, and using intention to guide the changes you're making, then in my opinion, you're not doing much to improve your game. For example, if you're working on a cut shot where the cue ball needs to transition to a specific area of the table, pay attention to where the cue ball ends up on a thick hit versus a thin hit. That gives you information about how well you struck the ball. If you're not paying attention to those details, it's hard to know what actually hitting the ball well feels like. With that mindset, here are some ways to speed up your solo practice. First of all, not all drills are created equal, but drills do matter. And the drills that matter are the ones that teach a specific skill or have a clear progression. Learning a certain type of hit or a cue ball path or repeatable outcome. Those are useful drills. A lot of drills out there are really just challenge drills. Run this layout, run this pattern, see if you can finally get out and call yourself a good player. Those rely on you hitting the ball 100 different ways. That might build grit, but it doesn't really sharpen a skill very quickly. So when the goal is improvement, skill building drills are always going to beat run completion challenges. But let's not confuse skill building with shot repertoire, okay? If you are constantly facing shots that sit right at the edge between I can make this, you're confident in it, and I hope this goes in, the solution might not be shot making. It might actually be just better cue ball control, giving yourself easier shots instead of grinding low percentage shots until they become hangers, because they won't, especially under pressure. This is why I look differently at something like the Mighty X drill. Stop, follow, and draw corner to corner. It's a super popular drill, and it's great for checking alignment and stroke. It's a solid diagnostic tool, but drilling it for hours is not a fast path to improvement. Versus something like the yo-yo drill, controlling the cue ball across the table off a cut shot down the rail, that's usable. That's inevitable. That shows up in real games. Try to be sensitive to what is actually usable in game that's going to give you a better chance of getting out instead of practicing those low percentage shots. Now, I want to talk about something that most players get backwards: how they structure their practice. Most people don't even know or talk about this. I know a lot of players who rely on dedicated practice sessions, but they warm up and they ease into things and they make practice progressively harder, saving the tough stuff for later. But then by the end of the practice session, the structure falls apart and they end up just hitting balls for an hour or two, not getting anywhere. And honestly, I think that's a bit backwards. Think about it. Your best focus, coordination, and discipline are available to you at the beginning of the session. That's when you should be practicing all the difficult stuff. Adaptation happens when you live at the edge of your capabilities, when the task is hard enough to demand your full attention, but not so hard that it collapses into chaos. Balance. Identifying the holes in your game first, then choosing the drills that directly target those weaknesses. Spend 10 to 20 minutes on one focused skill while your energy is high. Then after that, transition maybe into something a little more loosey-goosey. March run out where you incorporate what you've just worked on, or something like playing the ghost. Now the ghost is one of the best solo practice tools because it adds pressure and feedback. You can play the 9-ball ghost or 6-ball ghost or whatever fits your level. Adjust the difficulty so that you are challenged, not cruising in apathy, not drowning in anxiety, challenged. Now, beyond drills and the ghost, solo practice should include specific skill work like getting acclimated to kicking, safeties, learning how to push out, breaking, but don't stress about learning it all at once. Learn it in batches. Don't overload yourself or you'll forget everything and never incorporate anything. One of my favorite ways to increase the efficacy of skill building is by building mini games, right? Be creative, keep score, add pressure, keep it engaging. And let's be honest, the big hurdle in practicing well is staying engaged and feeling like it's fun. Look, I know you guys get bored hitting balls around and sometimes feel like a kid being forced to eat their broccoli doing drills. Gamifying practice helps relieve that. Improvement comes from intention plus attention. Pay attention to what your game actually needs and practice with the intention of improving those exact skills. Skill building beats shot building every time, especially if you're aware of what those skills feel like when you're done drilling so that you can actually apply that in game. That's how solo practice stops being just time at the table and starts becoming real progress. And one last quick tip here about solo practice. If you have a way to record yourself when you play, do it. It is immensely useful. You will be shocked at how much easier it is to notice when you've made the wrong moves in your practice if you can skim and watch it back for yourself. And this actually brings me into our next segment, practicing with a partner. Because what does a camera do when you film yourself? It gives you the objectivity of being able to look at yourself from outside yourself. So let's start talking about practicing with another player now. This is where a lot of players think they're improving. Really, they're just spending table time playing friendly games with no structure. And that's fine. Look, there's nothing wrong with playing for fun. Just don't confuse it with practicing what actually improves our game quickly. Practicing with another player can be incredibly valuable, but only if you can use it intentionally. The first upgrade here is very simple. Take everything you should be doing in solo practice and simply do it with another player involved. The accountability keeps you on track. It's like going to the gym with a friend. You push a little harder, you stay more honest, and those shared experiences stick better. One of the biggest advantages here is just awareness, right? Awareness of your game, fundamentals, shot choices, etc. Most of us think we know what we're doing, but under pressure, especially in competition, that awareness goes away. And a good practice partner can see those things that you can't in your own game. That feedback becomes incredibly valuable. Now I'm gonna take a minute to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, because this right here is by far my favorite way of practicing pool, period. Play doubles against the table. That's it. Just you and one other partner. That could mean doubles versus the ghost, or just loose partner practice where you're both working through racks together. This is where, for me, a lot of my recent improvements have come from. I practice this way regularly with a friend of mine who's better than me. I'm telling you, it works. And here's why it works. When he plays shape for me, I feel the pressure to deliver. And when I play shape for him, I feel that responsibility fulfilled. It changes how you think. You're not just trying to make the ball, you're trying to play for someone else. There's a weird pressure there. And for the stronger player, it's just as valuable. Trying to tighten patterns and cue ball control makes the run out easier for the weaker player, but forces you to need to execute. It exposes sloppy decision making and it sharpens that execution. Now, sometimes we will walk through options or try different patterns, and when a shot becomes a problem, we stop and we work on it. And that loop, attempt, miss, discuss, adjust, that's incredibly powerful with a partner that you cannot do by yourself. Really quick, one thing to be aware of here is the skill gap. If the skill gap between partners is too large, this doesn't work as well. If one player is doing all the heavy lifting, that push and pull kind of disappears. There's less shared pressure. And remember, the fast track to improvement is when you are playing at the very edge of your ability. The best practice partners are close enough in skill that you feed off of each other, and that friction is where the growth lives. Iron sharpens iron. All of that practice is great, but without testing yourself under pressure, you don't really know what it's going to do for your game. You can assume that you're getting better, but the only way to really know for sure is to put yourself in situations where you're either going to perform or you bust. And when you compete, we get to find out what we're made of. So let's talk about a few ways to compete and what that actually does for your improvement. So now let's talk about leagues. Leagues are a great entry point into competition. They are an easy way to build a pool community, get consistent matches, and experience different play styles. Especially for beginners, leagues can be incredibly valuable. But how much a league actually improves your game kind of depends a lot on the league itself. The culture, the rules, the players, the expectations. In many leagues, matches are quick and informal, and that makes it hard to integrate serious practice goals, especially if you're like me and you don't have unlimited table time and you have to make a choice between competition and practice. Now, leagues can be great, but they can also quietly become a trap. Between the social dynamics, team politics, and management styles, sometimes you're rewarded more for just showing up than actually improving. If you're using leagues as a development tool, be honest with yourself about what it's actually giving you and what it's not. And if you're happy with it, cool. Now, tournaments. Tournaments are a different animal. Whether they're small, local, regional, or open events, tournaments almost always give you something valuable. The structure itself creates pressure. As you move through tournaments, the competition naturally gets tougher. That means challenge increase whether you're ready for it or you're not. That's huge. Remember, adaptation exists at the edge of your abilities. Tournaments also get you exposed to different equipment, different conditions, and different opponents without the long-term commitment of leagues. So win or lose, tournaments are a great tester for your game. They reveal what holds up and what doesn't. And the feedback is baked into the format. Okay, now let's talk about matching up, getting in the grease. This, in my opinion, is the best way to fine-tune competition settings that really drives home that skill to challenge ratio, and it forces you to play at the edge of your ability. Do you have to play for stakes? No. But also, yeah, maybe I'll get flack for this, but if you want to get better quickly, you gotta play for something. Some players can generate real focus without anything on the line, and I'm kind of one of those guys. But if the goal is to fight through the physical and mental adversity of another person, putting some heat on yourself makes a big difference. Does it actually have to be money? No, but look, money is the easiest way to make it real. It helps you learn what makes you rush, what makes you tighten up, what makes your arms shake. That friend that I play doubles with all the time, he likes to say, if you've never gotten down to see 2 9-balls, then you haven't played for enough. That's grit, that's pressure, that's the kind of experience that hardens your game. Look, we all got a dog in us. The question is, at what point does your dog come out? Now that kind of brings me into my next point, which is mental game. And I'll keep this one brief because honestly, the mental game deserves its own whole series. If you don't learn how to fight the stories you tell yourself before, during, and after matches, you will never play up to your potential. That's not a skill issue. That's a self-management issue. Find ways to work on it. And I'll come back to that in a bit. So now the last piece of competition, and honestly, one of the most important for improvement, is reflection. You can't fix what you don't see. If you have ever had the chance to stream one of your matches or record yourself in a match, it's often more valuable than recording practice, because if you approach it the right way and you don't judge yourself and you don't relive that pain, watch it objectively, you can look for patterns in decision-making and flaws in your game that worked or didn't work, and that can be instrumental understanding what to improve on. I mean, you'll probably uncover some uncomfortable truths, but more often than not, I think you'll also find things that you're doing well. That matters because improvement comes from attention, and attention drives focus, and focus drives improvement. That's how competition stops being intimidating and it starts becoming one of the most powerful tools you have to hone and grow your game. Now, the last and honestly most powerful tool for improving quickly is instruction and coaching. These two things are often lumped together as the same thing, but honestly, they're not interchangeable. They can address a lot of the same areas in your game, but one of them is more involved in your long-term improvement than the other. An instructor is someone who helps you with your physical game, fundamentals, mechanics, alignment. Good instruction brings clarity. It can clean up things quickly and help you understand what you're actually doing with your body. But instruction can often lean towards being prescriptive, right? Do this, change that, stand here, move this way. That's not necessarily bad, but you have to stay aware of the principles behind what the instructor is trying to give you. Remember, description over prescription, because there's no perfect form in pool. The value of instruction isn't copying someone else's mechanics, it's understanding why change helps and adapting that change to your body and your game. Now, coaching is very different. Coaching is about direction and purpose. A coach helps you decide what to work on, when to work on it, and why it matters right now. A good coach is usually also an instructor, but with a longer view. They help track your development, identifying patterns in your game that you don't see, and connect the dots between practice, competition, and mindset. Now, this is where a lot of players really begin to improve at breakneck speed, because instead of guessing what's wrong with their game, you are working with a coach with a clear, objective plan tailor-made for you by someone who actually knows what to look for and what they're doing. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still not really moving forward, this is probably the missing piece. Look, I'm a big fan of self-directed learning, but it only goes so far. At some point, you're gonna have to need outside eyes, someone who understands not just the right shots, but the right process for you. And for me, that's Demetrius Gelatis. Demetrius runs a Patreon group called Slate Billiard Club. Go check it out. It's 20 bucks a month. And honestly, it's one of the best investments I've ever made in my game. I know I sound like I'm selling something. This is for real. This isn't an extra content platform. This is real coaching. He doesn't hold back, and he doesn't just recycle YouTube advice. He's deeply involved with how we work on our game. Between the physical insights, the structure, and the personal attention that you get by being in this group, the value is kind of hard to overstate. Earlier, I mentioned the mental game and how important that is. Demetrius has a mental game course built into the Patreon with genuinely useful tools for dealing with pressure, doubt, and self-talk. It's not motivational fluff. It's practical ways to fight your demons at the table. And that's on top of the transformational physical improvements I am getting from this group. And one of the biggest bonuses is the community. There's a Discord with Patreon members where we share practice, review videos, tackle monthly challenges, and push each other to improve. That kind of environment matters. It's like a dojo. Believe me, I know how important that is. Growth accelerates when you're surrounded by people who are working seriously and on the same goals. So if you're serious about improving quickly and you want to structure, feedback, and direction, I strongly recommend going to take a look at that Patreon group. I've left a link for it in the description. And look, regardless of who you are learning from, the bigger takeaway is this: instruction cleans things up and coaching moves you forwards. So those are the 5 areas that actually drive improvement in pool. None of them work in isolation, but if you use them in the right way with intention, you can find yourself unstuck. If this helped you and you're thinking about your game differently, I would consider subscribing, leave a comment, let me know if this is the kind of video that you want to see more of, what kind of topics that you would like me to do deep dives on. I promise more is coming. Thanks for watching. Happy shooting.